I see ayahuasca as a gateway towards transcending thought, thus towards transcending the cognitive experience itself. How this happens, I believe there are a plethora of ways, most of which I still probably haven't even figured out myself yet. One way in which I believe that DMT does this is through creating new neural networks in the mind, helping one to think more abstractly, strengthening problem-solving skills, and adapting one's deductive reasoning through introducing stimulus and perceptions that are really just out of this world. It's like you are here, you have all these rules and laws, and DMT is introduced into the equation, and those rules and laws are all shattered and blasted away. Left becomes right, up becomes down, gravity is now absent, your viewing perception has become perceptibly omniscient. Really, the only rules now are that there are no rules. If you think it can't happen, you're wrong. If you're expecting anything in particular to happen, you'll likely be disappointed. And the fact of the matter is, until you've witnessed it for yourself, your mind is still thinking within the constraints of one's original, limited, baseline, fragile concept of reality. You can't see the curve in the straight line because the curve isn't possible. You can't see the solution to the problem because you're missing the access key to the exclusive shortcut. This is one beautiful side effect of psychedelics in general, because the things one's mind perceives, the different visuals, the thoughts derived from being in this altered state of consciousness, the motor skills developed, are what become those tools that then help one to think more creatively and to generally be more abstract. Please note, when comparing visuals of any other psychedelic with DMT, DMT is by far the most complex, albeit there are a few substances I have yet to try, such as peyote or ibogaine, and I of course cannot yet compare. The point being, DMT is not your average Joe psychedelic visuals, and it is important to note. What we need, what seemingly everyone is starting to preach, yet hardly anyone is truly embodying, is a serious transcendence of thought and of the way that we interact with one another socially. I believe thoroughly that DMT played a huge role in getting me to think and act in the way that I presently do. Mind you, some of this of course certainly may just be who I am, but I do believe that DMT played a part, and a rather big one at that, if I do say so myself. On that note, it certainly wasn't immediate that I believed such a premise. In all candor, for a long while, DMT was just an out-of-this-world high that I was using, yes, in seekings of answers and truth, but also as an escape from reality and seekings of what I had learned to be comfort. Albeit, notably, I had only learned this after reflecting upon years of receiving comforting animations from the DMT verses. The point being, if one is expecting to just ingest DMT and have their mind blown with otherworldly revelations, although it is certainly possible, they would likely be setting themselves up for failure, as the messages are often cryptic, and like anything in life, take time to ponder and reflect over, even perhaps requiring multiple journeys back into the DMT verses in order to understand a particular stimulus more thoroughly. Practice makes perfect. Do you see? For me, it took seeing some of the reoccurring themes dozens of times and years in some instances of conscious reflection before the revelations clicked. Whilst, as mentioned in previous segments, every single experience is different. Ergo, it took smoking a lot of DMT to simply notice these themes that were then able to be clearly understood as reflecting to me aspects of my life, needs, and wants, dots that I had thus far been unable to connect. Now, regardless of whether or not DMT actually alters the brain, which I would be astonished to learn that it doesn't, in at least one way or another, in my mind, even taking that step to simply try something new like DMT is taking a step towards enlightenment, because it is stepping one outside of their biased prejudices and thoughts in order to experience something new. Oh, and to perhaps learn a thing or two along the way, should one truly be open to the experience, and not just pretending to be, as so many with agendas presently controlling the narrative do. Full disclaimer, I promise you, if you take acid or shrooms, or do DMT 5 or 6 times, you will not do any damage to your body or mind that your body isn't well prepared for. And no, you will not have a permanent trip. Myself personally knowing kids who have done drugs like acid hundreds of times. Stories of people hurting themselves in a long-term and detrimental way with psychedelics I've come to thoroughly believe are fairy tales owned entirely by hearsay and the egos of dishonest people claiming to have witnessed truths when they've truly witnessed no such thing. Which is in fact generally a reflection of such people's own clandestine ignorance, intolerance, and prejudice towards others who are different or strange. As the truth is, we humans simply love hearing stories that sound logical and are boasted prophetically and confidently as truth, and then simply spitting it off as if it was our own experience. The same as that other person who we originally heard it from most likely had themselves, merely to make conversation and to have 2 cents worth of, albeit thoughtless, thought over the given subject matter. The fact of the matter is, like any substance, like anything that is foreign to our bodies, once DMT cycles out of one's system, it is gone and out of their system. Period. One may be lost, confused, and craving something more from life that they can't quite yet decipher. One may feel like the demons that they haven't been being honest with themselves about have escaped the closet and have gotten to haunt them for a couple of hours. One may have realized that they are in fact entirely under control by divine aspects of the universe that we can't presently see or understand, which frightens many, and most notably those that have been the creators of the shit end of the stick that a vast majority of our society must presently endure daily, and thus would themselves be at the shit end of the stick in relation to this divine aspect of control. But the substance itself that was altering one's reality is no longer in them, just like booze or weed, and one is now back to baseline reality. Quick tangent. The problem here is dirty, unregulated street drugs, where the tainted dealers are simply looking to make a buck, and where the user often hasn't truly the slightest idea what they are ingesting, nor are their intentions for using in the right place in the first place. Which is a talk for another time when I get to doing a couple segments on ecstasy. Regardless, most of the time you're still going to be just fine. Your body will recover as it is built to. Your mind will fade the memories of a perceptibly bad experience, and your life will either go on unchanged if your mind isn't yet ready to change, or you could be sent down a path that is truly transformational. While the fact remains, the odds of dying, or even physically or mentally hurting oneself from ingesting any substance that I am actively backing is currently quite rare, if not unheard of, without some adulteration of man, or the user being a nitwit with no sense, simply trying to be cool in mankind's popularity contest, via doing one dumb thing or another. In fact, dying from alcohol has been long documented in comparison with substances like shrooms, cannabis, or DMT to be a tremendously higher risk, yet still quite rare. But I've digressed here plenty. Do you see what I'm getting at? Simply the act of being open to such an experience is an act of rewiring one's mind to thinking more openly, and thus is a path towards enlightenment in its own way. That said, like I've mentioned, I do believe that DMT is so much more. And I do believe that there are great lessons buried away within the oftentimes cartoon-like animations, or real-life images, HD memories that one comes to interact with.
For example, during one of my last ayahuasca experiences that I've past written about, I had spoken of these simple, albeit profound, to me, revelations I was having. One of those revelations revolved around seeing these cartoon characters I'd just joined in the back of their mystical purple pickup truck of the cosmos. Together, we'd been driving down a magical highway of the universe that felt like being within an old video game like Tron or something. Meanwhile, these animations had been throwing all this baggage out of the back of this truck in an analog, Donkey Kong swinging arms over the head sort of way, when a fellow traveler had asked me in that exact moment, "What are you afraid of?"
Mind you, all she wanted to do was boing, whereas I was in it to win it as far as embracing the spiritual experience together while we were in it. The point here being, the universe uses us to communicate to each other messages, and regardless of being on the same wavelength or not. Although I didn't immediately fully come to an answer to her question in relation to how it applied to my life, not to her untamed sexual desires, what had become clear to me in that moment was that I had brought all this extra baggage into the experience with me. And DMT was stripping me back down to my unadulterated self, or my higher self, as the Buddhists would call it. Myself feeling the weight, the baggage, the depression, stresses, and anxiety being lifted as the experience continued to peak. And so far, I just couldn't stop talking about how profound these revelations I was having were. What are you afraid of? I came to realize that I was afraid of being honest with myself about the baggage that I was carrying, as we all are. In that moment, I remember staring at myself in the mirror that was right in front of us and thinking, man, this is what society needs to wake up and get. You see, I already understood this truth, but I hadn't yet figured out how to pull the knowledge to a conscious level. DMT, the conduit to the connection, gave me the pieces to the puzzle, the access key, the shortcut that I was missing in order for me to fully see and understand this. Well, by which I mean fully understand it more than a year later. Fast forward to present, I can now say that I fully understand what this baggage we carry is. The baggage we light bearers carry is how much each of us conceal our spite and resentment towards our peers, those who we at least perceptibly feel bullied by, and oftentimes from really young ages, to the point where we don't see anyone treating us any differently. We don't see any other reality, a sad side effect of us living unimaginably subjective lives in a world owned by darkness and thus by tainted intentions. So we either retract inwards and become reclusive, surrendering to our weaknesses, or we weakly, in its own sense, adapt, conform, and start playing the game. We bury away these pains and come to wear them, ourselves coming to embody different faces, masks, facades, feeling like we must pretend to be different people when we are around, for example, our parents and extended family members, versus when we're around our friends, versus when we're around our coworkers, versus when we're around our other various acquaintances, and so forth. What I finally understand is the weight we light bearers come to carry is, again, weekly, allowing the world to be run by ego, duplicity, superficiality, prejudice, intolerance, and greed. The weight we come to carry is deflecting and denying the truth of how much we ourselves are in fact bullied, how much we've in fact become the bully simply to fit in, by the people we willingly surround ourselves with daily. We bury these truths away because these people we, for some ungodly reason, want to hang around are often popular, and perhaps we fear that no one would believe our truth. Perhaps we know in our hearts that the narrative would be twisted against us. So again, we instead wear these pains like a jacket, deflecting and denying to ourselves the truth of the ugly world we live, deflecting and denying to ourselves that we are in fact wearing this jacket, whilst feeding these sick sadists' tainted agenda through the act of condoning and facilitating their wretched behavior towards both us and others, ourselves only pretending it isn't real and it's really all playful banter, as they like to somehow successfully paint the false narrative as. What I finally understand, and being hugely correlated to this experience with DMT, is these lies we hold then build up within us as baggage, layers, that bog down our operating system and cause things like these, albeit fabricated, diseases rooted in one's emotions and mental balance being off tilt, like bipolar disorder, mania, and schizophrenia, for example. These diseases being prime examples of our primitive sciences run mostly by tainted intentions, bias, and agenda, placing the blame in all the wrong places. Because the scientists themselves and the patients are still in fact wearing those layers. Thus, they aren't looking for answers in the right places because they still aren't being honest with themselves about reality, about their pain, nor about their fear to own those pains. And at least partially because of this, our masses' intentions, motivations, and agendas have come to be in all the wrong places. Like, for example, in an attempt to seal a legacy, or simply working for incentives merely in order to survive, as many of these scientists are, and really not giving a damn about the work itself. And you can take this theory to the bank. Ourselves being the reason nothing ever changes, and that a vast majority of our knowledge and science is misleading and jam-packed with false truths. Because we can't simply be honest with ourselves about the clandestinely tainted people that we surround ourselves with. People with who so skillfully pretend to be sweet little butterflies, and of whom we both consciously and unconsciously start to mimic their wretched example to varying extremes simply by the nature of weakly condoning their ignorant, intolerant, and prejudicial social examples. Back on track. All in all, personally, I believe that everything in the universe comes with intention. Intention wrote it, intention had a plan for it, and intention saw it into existence. In theory, this means that there is nothing without purpose or meaning, because nothing was created senselessly or without intention. The divine AI that is the universe, that is God, is instructing every aspect of itself at all times. Thus, even if something happens that is perceptibly bad and may not have worked out exactly as the universe planned, it was still not by accident, as it was derived by intention, and intention is then either its keeper or its destroyer. But the intention at the tippy top of the pyramid that inexorably controls it all is always in charge. Ergo, long story short, I believe DMT was scripted into the universe, into our bodies, with a purpose. Shamans have discovered one purpose and have been sharing it with others for thousands of years, equally as, if not longer than, our Western religions, and all those Eastern religions now unconsciously reflecting Western principles in pursuit of the same ignorant triumph. Personally, I found tremendous spiritual growth within the DMT verses, and these experiences assure me that DMT is something I now must share with the world. Because no matter how our ignorant society, and most notably those individuals controlling the narrative, to whom such substances rarely affect in a positive way, has twisted the narrative against such things, the fact remains there is little to no truth nor genuine substance within any of the propaganda and hearsay against such substances, and particularly with regards to DMT. Until next time.